1,000 people. They're already at 9,000 and exploding now, so it's getting very interesting.
Well, I know I thought my son was just going to be here a couple years and leave, but I don't think he's going to leave. I think that might be where he's in the energy industry.
Yep.
So
Well, and
in finance, he's in the mergers and acquisitions. And
Yep.
I'm never going to get him back. Pretty sure.
well, the Houston market's hot, red hot right now, so I'm sure he'll have plenty to do.
I think so. What was that? Okay, great. Alrighty, so let's just talk about the beginning of your career.
Sure.
What event or moment made you think that local government was right for you?
Well, it all began for me actually in my master's in public administration program. I was expecting to work in Louisiana in state government. I was also working on my law degree at the same time, so I had it all planned out to work for probably the governor's office at some point, even law clerked there. But then I took a class on state and local government administration. Some of the case studies that we discussed really intrigued me about a profession that's not well known in Louisiana, so much so that I started quizzing my professor. And at some point, he basically said, I really think you should consider this position because you are very fascinated with it. And I wanted to get to not just shuffle paper, I wanted to actually do something and be able to see the fruits of the labor. And so I was very excited whenever I learned of this type of profession.
Oh, cool. That sounds great. Are there, in terms of being a city manager, what are the important qualities that you would say make someone successful?
So I think number one is being a very open communicator. You have a lot of elected officials and stakeholders in a community. They will not always agree on everything, but being open and honest about things is very important. So having a strong sense of integrity is another factor in being successful as a city manager. Lastly, I would say that having an open mind. Local government, most professions, you learn one or two very specific things and you become very good at those things. In local government, every city is different. They don't all provide the same services, nor do their residents request the same type of service quality or level. And so, being in tune with that community and being open-minded about what their wants and needs are can help make someone a very successful city manager.
Open mind and open communication.
Yep, and integrity.
So challenges that you faced in your career. So how long have you been in local government now?
So it's almost 7 years now.
And what challenges have you faced? What have been your toughest challenges?
Well, toughest challenges usually revolve around trying to make the budget work with the infrastructure that you have and trying to put together good plans that the residents can accept and understand. Having that communication bridge between yourself and the constituency is very important. Most of the time people think that government officials work in a vacuum, that they make decisions, their voices aren't heard. So it's always a challenge, I find, to make sure that we are not only being receptive to them, but that they know that we're being receptive to them. So whether or not it's having community outreach for new plans or new revitalization ideas for the community, it's very important to always, upsell that portion of what you're doing, is that you are listening. So that's one big challenge, especially in the current climate of things. Another challenge I find in my career in city management really revolves around making sure that the elected officials fully understand the importance of the city manager form of government. Sometimes when you have a full-time paid staff, sometimes you forget that it does take all of those man hours every week to come up with the ideas, the plans, the organization, and so forth. And so always trying to make sure our elected officials understand that the city manager form of government provides them an opportunity to have professional management as well as still having responsiveness in a democratic process. So those have been the two main challenges I've found.
Has being a member of ICMA helped you with those challenges?
Absolutely. So, there are several resources that ICMA provides. We have, I've on multiple occasions downloaded handbooks on council manager relations. I've also worked on alternative service delivery methods, through the ICMA resource portal. Those were resources that helped me show the council, hey, these are the things that ICMA provides, and it's important to have a professional manager who's thinking about those things, but also has the backing of an organization that provides career and job resources along the way. And so it's been very helpful to me to be able to go on the website, go to the ICMA University, the webinars and so forth. Those have helped in multiple occasions, not just in educating the public or the council, but also in coming up with new ideas, because we're all cauldrons of experimentation. And so it's great to see what my sister cities around the United States and the world are doing.
Do you, you talked about the growth in your area right now?
Yes.
Exponential growth, it sounds like. What unique challenges do they bring to you?
Well, going back to educating is one of the biggest things. When you're in a smaller community, very strong agricultural ties, one of the biggest things that we are faced with is making sure that they understand that we're not trying to erase the history of Dayton. One of the biggest things of all is that we want to take the things that are great about the community and enhance them. That's what coming to ICMA is all about, learning what other communities are doing, because no city wants to wipe away their history. They want to cultivate that history, create a cultural and arts center for their communities oftentimes, and that's what we're trying to do in Dayton as well. And so having ICMA by my side through that has been very helpful. We have developers that want to come in and take advantage of the great opportunities of being 35 minutes from downtown Houston, but we also want to make sure our residents know that we're out for their interests as well, and that's by preserving our history, making sure we keep the building standards and facades up, being able to talk to sister cities on how they handled these same situations, because other cities have handled these types of growth patterns in the past, and so learning from what they did do or what they shouldn't have done as well.
That's great. I threw that in there. I apologize.
No, hey.
It's interesting.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I feel like probably a lot of people are facing that. What about your career highlight? What's been the highlight of your career so far?
Well, there's several projects that I've worked on. One of the great things about being a city manager is pretty much any project you do is enhancing quality of life, and so I always try to look through the prism of that. One of the things that I'm extremely proud of is a very recent one in the city of Dayton. We recently negotiated a master development agreement with all the public financing negotiated to put a 1,050-acre industrial park online, which will provide between 7,500 and 15,000 living wage jobs to the area. So we're very excited about that, and so far I would take that as my biggest check mark so far in my career.
Sounds great. That's something to be proud of. What excites you about the profession right now?
Well, actually, what's been exciting me over the last couple of years in the profession has been watching a lot of the smart city initiatives that cities have taken upon over the last 10 to 15 years. And now what used to be something talked about in one corner of a learning lab session has now become the major topic of ICMA now. And so watching local government evolve, using the newest technologies today to provide better service for the residents, and watching how we used to collect data change completely, and changing our paradigm and what service delivery means and what we could do. Many of the things that we're doing now, even in the city of Dayton, 10 years ago, cities our size, we're only about 8,000 people, growing of course, but 10 years ago I don't think anyone would have thought cities of 8,000 could harness a lot of the GIS systems that are the backbone for smart city initiatives, and so it's a very exciting time to be in the profession right now.
No one gave us that answer yet. Let's see. I think you've answered pretty much. I think you sort of answered this, but what do you believe are the most important issues facing local government right now? The profession.
Sure, the profession. Well, unfortunately there's been a narrative that the city manager form of government, it may not be necessary. even though there are statistics and surveys that show that the most fiscally healthy cities in the country are run in a council manager form of government. Service delivery is very efficient in a council manager form of government. I think it's very important for us to maintain a narrative that the council manager form of government is over 100 years old, has been successful, will continue to be successful. It works in the private sector. Having the board and CEO set up that's commonplace in the corporate world, and it's a way for cities to take some of the politics out of some of the decision making. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our profession. Is I do believe that there is a bit of wanting to take back and roll back a lot of the initiatives of cities being a council manager form of government. So we have to be upfront and be honest about the fact that city managers provide value to their communities that they're in. They're not just an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy.
Okay, so these questions ICMARC asked us to ask.
Yes.
So first question is, what is the role of cities and towns in our communities?
Well, dating back to thousands of years ago, cities have always served as the cultural and arts center, a place to be a public forum for all of the residents. I think what you're seeing now with a lot of the digital solutions we're finding in cities is that we're starting to come back to a lot of that, where we're talking about civic discourse being used in a digital format, opening up dialogue for people that used to never be a part of the discussion. So I believe the most important thing that cities can be is to be inclusive of everybody in a community, find out what the issues are, and look for effective and efficient ways of getting the job done, raising quality of life through that type of dialogue. Yeah.
Very good. How about the biggest challenge facing local government today?
Biggest challenge. I believe that one of the biggest issues that governments have, local, state, federal, but definitely in the local government world, is understanding that we've built out an infrastructure that is very large, it's very expensive to upkeep. Cities such as the Nashvilles, the Charlottes, the Houstons and Dallases of the world have started to learn that density is not a bad thing. It's okay if you build it deliberately and intelligently. Density is a good thing, and being able to harness density into better retail and commercial opportunities for those cities. We as a society have really been happy with a suburban sprawl that costs a lot of money to maintain, and that's partially why you see a lot of the engineering societies grading the United States relatively low nowadays, because we have such large road, water, sewer infrastructures. And so I think the challenge of this century of local governments is bringing people back to human scaled infrastructure and saying, can you walk to places? Where's your local shopping center? Is it 5 miles away or is it 5 blocks away? And trying to have an economy reinforcing that human scaled infrastructure is going to be a challenge of this century.
I'm totally with you. I really am. I was thinking about when you were telling me about 35 miles outside, well, how are people going to get into the city? And my son is, when he moved there, I went with him to look at an apartment, and I asked the woman who was taking us around, I said, where's the public transportation? And she looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah, Metro is not a big thing in Houston.
She said, well, nobody takes that. And I said,
Right.
really? And then a little later, she took us to an apartment that was on
Yes.
the transportation line, and she said, right there's where people are waiting for that. And I don't think you want your son waiting for transportation. I was like, we in D.C., we
Yep.
survive on Metro.
Yes.
I couldn't get to work.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's one of the issues is that's the outlier in the United States, really. If you look at most of the major cities of the United States, the New Yorks, the Chicagos, the DCs, Virginia, they do have it, but the Dallases, Fort Worth, did they have, Houston.
I think they had a mile and a half quality or something. I don't remember. Last question.
Sure.
What role do retirement benefits play for local government employees?
Sure. Well, it's one of the biggest perks of being in local government is the idea that at some point in time there's a secure financial retirement waiting at the end of that hard work in public service. It's very important in recruiting and retention of staff. Of course, it's very hard to explain to a 20 or a 21-year-old, hey, you know what, if you work for 30 to 35 years, you're going to have this great retirement. But what I do hope we can do, especially with our younger employees, is show them that we are investing in them. And I think we need to rebrand how we are investing in them and make sure they understand how much funding through health benefits, retirement benefits, supplemental benefits, and starting putting cash figures to what we're investing in them individually. But I think with that rebranding, a lot of more people will be very pleased and very happy to know that their local government, their employer, is investing as much in them as they are, and having resources like ICMA, RC is a very important part of that portfolio. It's not just about getting your pension, it's about making sure that you're putting away a little bit of money on the side as well in a separate fund to firmly secure your retirement future. Great recruiting tool, retention tool, and probably one of the most important things that local governments can use to retain talent.
You're gonna love that. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
That's the other questions were for podcast, but it's too noisy in here.
So, no, I understand. Well, thank you so much. I hope it wasn't too wordy. I was trying not to.
You did great. That was really good.
Please do. Love to. We're small agriculture.